Hey y'all, it's Sarah, and today I'm working on something a little different. So I wanted to bring in some stamps. These are just some Dollar Tree clear stamps. You guys have probably seen this one. I love this set. It's pretty stinking cute, and there's a lot of different little options in here. And today I'm using this cute little bee and this daisy looking flower. If you're not familiar with these kind of stamps or how they work, you need something like this. Dollar Tree sells them. Michaels sells them. Most of your craft places sells them. It's just a little hard, clear acrylic block, and they come in a lot of different sizes. And I've got two different sizes here. Mine, I think they're a little bit thicker than maybe the ones the Dollar Tree sells, but any of them will work. So that's what I'm starting out with. I have tried out tons of different inks and ink pads. This is the one in my stash that I've had the best results with doing this. And you notice it's not even marked. This thing is so old, I don't even know if they make these anymore. I don't even know who made this. Literally, this is all you can see on it. But this is what I'm using. You may have to test some different inks. But when it comes to the black ones, that's the one I had the most success with. So let's go ahead and get started. As with any of my spreads, I usually come in with a ruler and mark some places off. I'm doing it a little different today because of how I'm laying out my design. But I usually mark some places off for meal plans and to remind myself to hydrate well. Because, you know, we're basically houseplants. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those things off. Let me pull this out. I'm going to be starting with a yellow chisel tip highlighter. This is just a generic. You guys know what this is supposed to be a generic of. The best thing I can tell you to do on doing this is try to keep your stroke long and even. Try not to stop or hesitate as you're pulling it down, and you'll get an almost printed look with your marker. Since I am using yellow, I want to give you a little tip. Make sure the edge of your straight edge is clean, because it will transfer some of that ink if you're not cautious. And to clean the edge of your ruler or your stencils or any of those things, just use a little bit of household rubbing alcohol and wipe it off. And that should clean pretty much any ink issues you have. This is a really, really pale yellow out of this. I don't know if you can even see it very well, but it is a very pale yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my lines in. There's mine. You may have noticed that I did something a little weird down here. I didn't finish out my lines right on my weekend section. I'll have to put that part of my meal planner probably up a little higher because I want to put my design or part of my design somewhere down in here. And let's go ahead and talk about getting the design that I plan on using. And you can use these stamps a million different ways, but I'm going to be mixing the stamping and some doodles. So it's still kind of a doodle spread, but I'm just going to kind of mix the ideas. So to get started, I'm going to make sure you can see. The cool thing about these stamps is they are absolutely reusable for many, many years. I have sets that are almost as old as my kids. You can wash them off, let them air dry, and they'll be sticky all over again. And we'll cling right back to this. I'm starting with the flower. And I'm going to try to not make a mess. I have a tendency to always end up leaving. If there's any of you that have ever seen any of my crafting videos or painting or any of that, somehow I always leave fingerprints on everything that I do. So I'm just going to tap this in here really well. Try to get it loaded so that my ink is dark and crisp. And it looks like I got it covered pretty well. The cool thing, I want to point out, the cool thing about the shape of this particular flower is that the way that they did it, You can do it upright. You can kind of lean it towards its side. I'm going to go several different directions with it. So I'm going to maybe tilt a little bit as I come in. And I'm going to do it in a lot of different locations. So we'll see. And you're just going to stamp it down like you would any other stamp. You can put as many of these flowers as you want to. We're going to add to them and put some stems and things like that. So keep that in mind as you're applying your stamp. Or I'm going to be doing that. You could leave it as the flower. It's awful pretty. I love how detailed these are, by the way. I don't know if you noticed, they are pretty detailed. I have some ideas, and I'll show you in a minute. I did tinker with altering these, the bees especially, and turning them. I don't know if any of you have seen some of my drawings of bees, and I like the fuzzy bees. So I did tinker with these, and I'll show you some of my examples on making them fuzzy bees, but for the sake of easiness on this page, I'm not really going to alter the bees much. I will show you how I'm coloring them though. And I'm just inking this thing up. If you notice, I didn't necessarily get that image stamped super well right there. It's okay. Don't panic. You didn't mess anything up. We can always fix that with a pen. So I just did 3 at kind of some different heights. I'm going to do the same thing over here, except for I'm going to try to cluster these guys together. Let's see how well I do. As a matter of fact, I'll pull my example over, or where I tinkered. So here is where I played in an old planner, just trying to test out some ideas, testing some stamps, things like that, altering my bees, and I'll show you what I mean. So really close. I have some fuzzy bees, and they've actually got little details to their legs, and tried a couple different ways. However, for the sake of ease, I'm just going to stick with the stamp as it is, more like this little bee right here. And I might do a separate video just to show how to get some of the fuzziness on your bees if you're interested. But we're going to do, I'm not going to add the flower pot because I did like it, but I felt like it might be too much for most people. That's an awful big piece taking up space. So I'm going to try to do that slightly different, but it is an idea if you want to do it. You can see, even with the little clay pot, it's pretty cute. I'm going to look over here and try to determine where I want to start this cluster of flowers and see how this goes. I haven't tested out going this way. I've got the idea in my head, but we're going to see together. I'm here to make the mistakes, so you don't have to. I think I may start. Where might I start? Let's see. They're going to come out pretty large. So I still have a little writing room down here and some above here. I may start somewhere around here with my little cluster. Let's do it. You're not ruining anything. Don't panic. You've got 52 weeks in your planner. So if you have one little oopsie on 1 week, that's still 51 other weeks that you have to make fantastic. So I want you to kind of look where these petals cross. I'm going to try to match them in between each other. So I don't necessarily have any ink that's overlapping, but if I do, it's not going to be a big deal. Can you see? So I'm touching those guys as closely up to each other as I can and doing them at different heights, maybe turning them at different angles. Let's see if I can fit this one here below. Usually I do this standing up so I can look straight down, and instead I'm sitting in my little squeaky chair today, so I'm having a little harder time seeing, but we're gonna wing it. I think I might want to turn this one to an angle too. Let's see how I do. Oh, that's nice. I got it a little overlap, but I think it's okay. I could even make this cluster bigger. Let's do that. I love these little flowers. They're awful cute. You could sit and try to doodle these out, but I don't know if anybody else is a Dollar Tree kind of person. And I've had some definitely more expensive versions of the acrylic stamps. Once upon a time, they used to run about 20 bucks for a set roughly this size. And to play with a set that's $1.25, that is certainly way more economical. And there's so many different things in this particular set that you could get multiple layouts out of one set. So there we go. That's that. I think that's where I'm going to stay. I'm pretty happy with that. That's a nice little cluster, I think. But the other cool thing is if you're already a sticker person or you're not super jazzed with your own handwriting and stuff, most of these little sets come with some kind of wording too, which is really cute. So now that I've got that part of my stamp down, I think I want to go ahead and start coming in and playing with adding some stems and greenery and all that. I'm grabbing a green highlighter that's close to me. I usually keep this little mix of set right at hand, so that's what I'm grabbing from. Not super particular about markers. I keep telling you guys, I love all markers. So right here, where I might have made a mistake, I can always come in with a pen and kind of repair those mistakes. I think I might wait until after I do my color, just in case. I don't want my pen to smear or any ink to smear, so I'm just going to wait it out and do that part at the very end. And to start off, I want to come right underneath this head of this flower and throwing a little green down there. I'll get closer. So I'm throwing just a little, I'm keeping in mind almost a U shape, although I'm working around the petals. So I'm just going to throw a little ink under the head of that, right about there. And we're going to, using this chisel tip and making it easier, maybe I can get something of a straight line out of this. I'm going to pull down. Pretty simple. And I'll do that on each one of these. And given how they're turned, I'll try to keep that in mind as I pull down their little base. So you can see I just threw something like that there. And I'm going to pull down. So this is pretty much what I'll end up doing with all of my little daisies on this side and on the other side. Okay, I'm happy with those. I might come in now. Let's go ahead and add our leaves. And I'm not making the leaves very complicated either. So in order to do my leaves, and you can look, guys, I don't know if you can see that. It's really faint. I've got my fingerprint there in ink. I joke that that is somehow my artist signature. So I pulled out a line. And I'm just going to show you a really easy way, especially with these chisel tips. Can you see I'm just bringing that flat edge of that chisel tip up and out and at different lengths and letting them just stop where I kind of feel like it's a decent size leaf. So something like that. I might throw a leaf out to this side, doing the same thing. Don't get too serious about making sure it's perfectly even or any of that, because the style of this leaf and the way that we're going to color it, it does not have to be perfect. So I went a little smaller with this one, and I might do another one that's a little smaller out to here. So same thing, you're just maybe making those lines a little shorter. And there are some leaves. Let's do let's do a really baby leaf here. I feel like there's a little bit of empty space there. So let's do a little baby leaf. A little new growth leaf. There we go. So I'm happy with those little leaves. Time for me to grab my favorite Dollar Tree Clip Click pen here. This is just a plain old ballpoint style pen. You can use whatever pen makes you happy to draw with. I'm going to come across here with some squiggly, bumpy something, and just do a little something like that. And I'm doing it under each one of them, just like that. If you're a jittery person, this is your time to shine. Let it jitter, let it be scraggly. Let's see. I'm going to come in with a really light color, and I wish I could tell you 100% that I think this is a number 106 in most of your brush marker lines, but it's so faded, it's hard for me to tell. So I'm going to throw a little of that in there. It's just a hint of a color. So I just squiggled it down in no particular fashion. And I might even, just because I can, come in with like another style tan looking marker and throw a little mark there. You saw that, right? I just squiggled it on there. No rhyme or reason, no specific amount of it. I just squiggled it on there. Now we're going to come in and do the stem and the leaves. And now that you did it with your highlighter, most of the work's done. You just outline it. So you can see I'm going to come here and outline it. This is probably going to be the hardest part for me, is following this skinny little stem. So right here, I might swoop a little down there where that leaf connects to its stem. And just bring that up. Almost like a little tiny check mark, and then just kind of bring it up. And I'm putting a real lightweight pressure on that so that that line is really thin. And I might even do a little something like that. So when I go to outline this, you're going to see it's a little strange because I'm not going to outline the leaf exactly in precision. I might outline a little outside of it, and you'll see. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm doing some jaggedy edges here, somewhere along the edge. So I'm leaving white space in there, a little point at the end. And now you see why I was saying that the way we were doing those lines would work for us as far as helping. It's going to add a little detail to that where those lines were almost looks intentional now. So I've claimed before I'm not really an artist, but I have learned ways to get my tools to work for me and things that I don't know that I would necessarily think of on my own. The markers leave marks in places where they overlap with the way that I color, and I find that that ends up bringing in details that I would not have personally thought to do. So doing those striations like that, because of that style of marker, allowed a little more detail to go in. So I want to do that with each one of these. And I'm going to continue to stay just outside the lines. And if you notice, I'm outlining outside of the lines, maybe around the more upper portion of this or these further out edges, and not so much down around the base of this leaf. I feel like that's probably where lighter spots would be if the leaf had lighter spots. The same thing with your little baby leaf. Let's see, now it's already got some light spots, some dark spots, and you didn't have to work that hard for it or think that hard about it. And some of these things start to just naturally become easier to think about as you go. So I'm going to swoop that up. We're going to add a few more layers of green to this, just to give it even more dimension. So I've got everybody outlined. Here I might come in and throw a little line or two, a little scratchy mark or two, a little dot or something. I just threw a little something in there. You might even do that to some of your leaves. A tip when you're trying to do maybe the lines in your leaves: as you pull up, lighten the pressure. I'm barely putting any pressure on this pen. I'm almost dragging it across, and it'll start to fade out and get really faint. And you just get a hint of a line. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And you don't have to add that part at all if you don't want to. I just think the more things that I add, the more it looks like I did something, maybe. So now they're a little veiny. They're, I don't know, they're leaning a little towards some realism. I'm throwing that bottom section that's going into the ground. I threw it just outwards a little bit. You could even add some grass on some of these. So back to my little green highlighter. I might throw up some stems here that look like little kid grass. When you draw grass as a little kid across. Think of it that way. That's basically what I'm doing. There we go. I'm happy with those. And I'm basically just following the marker line a little bit. And not even outlining the whole thing on all of them. Just the illusion of... There is a phrase for that. where you're faking the eye to think it's seeing something or seeing more than what it is. And I think it's called trompe l'oeil, if I can remember correctly. And that's basically everything that I do is faking it to look like it's something more than it really is. So I've brought this marker back in, and on kind of the bottom curve of each of those, I added a little more color, and I'll come back in a minute and do the same thing with my leaves. But that's where I'm at so far on these little flowers. You could even come in and throw a few little dots here into your dirt. So I'm just tapping that pen down in a couple places. No rhyme or reason to it, just in a couple places, just like that. We could get even wilder, and maybe, I don't know. I didn't do this on my practice attempt, but let's do it. I just did a little lumpy thing like that. And some lines down on it. Something like that. I think that looks close enough to a rock. I'm going to grab just some kind of gray. I'm not even being picky about what kind of gray. I could grab this one. I could grab this one. I could use this one. It doesn't matter to me. Just a lighter gray, because then I always start with the lightest color. And I'm trying to teach my son this right now. He's trying to teach me digital, and I'm trying to teach him to color in his artwork. So one of the things that I told him is that I have learned, start with the lightest color of whatever you're going to be doing. Try to start with the lightest color, and you can always build from that. You can always add more color at some point. So on this little guy, or all these little guys here, I'm just taking this Crayola Super Tip, and you can see it's already wore the label off, but they don't have a color name to them. But this is just a really faint kind of blue color. So I don't even know how well you guys are going to see it on screen. It's just a hint of a color in person. So I might just touch the tips of these white petals, because I'm going to keep my flowers white. You could do them yellow with an orange center. You could do them whatever color you wanted to, but since I want to keep mine white, I just did a little flick across those tips, and I'm not even sure how well y'all might be able to see that. Let's see if I get a little closer. Can you see it? No, it is that faint. I don't know how it shows up for you guys. It is just that faint. But it almost makes the white seem like a cool blue white, if that makes any sense. So I'm doing that to the tips of all of these, and I'm just flicking it down in some kind of way. And I wished it did show up a little better. So that's what I'm going to do for my flowers. The centers are going to be yellow like my bees. Now's the time I can come in, and I could fix this guy right here. Just come in and try to refollow where the line should be. I could do that and show you where I did it. But honestly, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it looks bad now that they're grouped together. I don't have a real problem with it. If you do, just go in and re-outline with a pen to fix anywhere that you might have made mistakes. Now, you might see that in my bee, because I did notice that my little bee stamp has some kind of glitch on him. I don't know if it was an intentional, if it's supposed to look like that, but even in the little print, can you see where they stamped it out onto the packaging, and there's like this glitched area right there? So my actual stamp has that as well. and I'll have to work around it. But it's kind of cool because it helped me work something else. Instead of just being a black blob of a bee, it let me work a little something else into it. So my next step is going to be to come in with my yellow, and I'm going to start with this lighter yellow and throw a little color in my centers. The center is really clustered. The little spots are really clustered with, looks like tiny circles. So you don't see a whole lot of the color. I might even come back with this blue and go around that area right there, just kind of above my center in a little swoop. And I know much of that is not showing up, but in real life I get to see it. And it adds a nice little touch. You guys might not see it much, but I see it really nicely. I think I might come in. This is a slightly different green. Usually I just use the same green, but I wanted to play around. This is a slightly different green highlighter. I might come in now and still using kind of a similar stroke pattern as we did when we started, coming off that center, and just randomly throw some in there. I'm not even being picky about where I throw a little of this green in there. It is a hair different of a green. This has almost got like a gray base green. So that's all I did. It gives a little bit of a watercolor looking leaf. I might take this one a little further since that leaf is so big. Okie doke. I'm happy with that so far. I gotta tell you though, I already forgot which highlighter that I used. Since I pulled them all out, I already made myself forget which highlighter I used for my gray on my rock. I don't think it matters. They're all pretty close to the same gray, to be honest with you. I'm going to come right back in on this rock a little bit, just on that one side where I put those lines. If y'all notice, I do this thing a lot, which is why I'm always so inky. When the ink sometimes will still sit on the page, a lot of times I'll try to tap it off and let my fingers absorb it, because the longer the ink sits on your paper, there is a risk of it bleeding through. You know, when it makes that little lift up puddle. So when you see me tap that, that's what I'm doing, is trying to keep it from sitting there any longer than necessary if it's not drying as quick as I'd like. I try to tap it off so that it doesn't sit there too long. So that's where we're at right now. I think we're already looking pretty cute. I might even come in with my favorite little, this is light cool gray. And I get these, you can buy these individually, just buy this one particular color at Pop Shelf, if you guys have one of those. So that's where I got this one from. Usually I pull grays out of whatever sets I have, but this one is one of my favorites because it's so faint. It's so subtle. So I might put a little underneath some of these. Maybe not everywhere, but under some spots. Possibly under the bottom of my petals a little bit to make them pop out a little more. I've got some fingerprints that maybe that'll hide. Under a couple of leaves here. I think that's pretty cute. I will stick with that. I want to play with my little bee now. So I've got him. Maybe you can see where part of the little issue here on my bee is. That part is not even. It's got a couple little uneven spots. But like I said, I'm not even disappointed about that. Like it's not even a complaint. it ends up leaving some white spots in my bee. And I'm going to show you here in a second why I'm not going to complain about that. As a matter of fact, I think I did all of mine. I ran with it on all of mine. When I tried to go ahead and color that whole thing in where the little issue on mine was, and I tried to go back in and fill in and make it just solid black. Honestly, I didn't like the bee solid black. I liked that it had that little bit of white space gap in it. I'm going to bring my bee somewhere over here to look like, whoops, I just dropped that down. There may be an issue under there. We'll find out together. Okay, so you can see my bee had a couple of issues, but look how fun that ended up turning out. It left these little spots, and I think that added more to it. So that's why I said I was not even going to complain on that. And I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. But that's how mine is. I don't mind it. One thing I will fix is maybe this gap up here in the wing right there. And I'm going to do my best to assume that that wing line would be right about there. And maybe right here. And the rest of it, I'm not going to sweat it. I'm not going to panic over it. It's not a big deal to me. See what I mean? Like, I prefer that it had some of that gap in it, because when I tried with a marker to fill that in originally, it was too dark. I don't know. It almost makes it more detailed. So I'm going to let that dry. We're going to work back on this other side, and then we'll come back to the bee and throw a little color on the bee. Let's go over here and try to hit some of these stems. This one, we're going to do basically the same, but obviously, since they overlap, they're going to come down a little bit differently. So let's figure that out together. I will still try to do their little, my science mind is drawing a blank at the moment. The base of the bud, I guess. Let's see. Where might that one come down at? This one's turned at slightly of an angle. And I'm going to try to squeeze this in to all of them. Even if you're not really seeing much of it, I'm going to try to squeeze something in there. And then this guy, I feel like he's turned a little weird and wonky, but I'm going to try to figure it out. Okay, that's close enough for me. So I think my ground is going to come to right about here. I might bring my ground area to somewhere along this space. So that's where I'm going to drag down to. And I'm trying to keep in mind where these flowers are coming from. So I'm going to skip across those. This was much easier in the flower pot when I tried it with the flower pot. I didn't have to think too hard about it, since the flower pot itself was going to hide most of it. But they look a little sad at the moment. We're going to try to throw some leaves in here the same way that I did before. Some of them will overlap, which is fine. And throw a few. I'm crossing over. We already got those lines. It's fine. It won't matter. The part of that helps is when we go into trace. You'll be able to decide which leaves are going to cross which direction at that point. So I'm using the same method of just dragging that up. And you could even blur in some green, like just color in some green back there. Like you're kind of seeing leaves, but you're kind of not. There's really no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing here. Just getting a little color on the page, and then I'll run with it from there. So that's kind of what I did. I just looked to see where it might need to be filled in and threw some ink down. I'm going to do the same thing as far as the ground, but I'm just going to do a bigger version. So I might come in and start over here. And scraggly that across. Same thing I did using the lighter marker. And I just scribbled it down a little. That's why I enjoy doing this in my planner, because I don't have to take it very seriously. It's not like I'm trying to do this in an art book and make it seem like something super artsy. I feel like doing it in my planner gives me a little freedom to be quirky with it. Throw my little lines down there. I'm happy with most of this. I will go ahead and start tracing this out the same way I did with the other one. And now I'll be able to determine which leaves are crossing over what. I know I can go ahead and do these upper stems safely. And then I'll come down and go ahead and start doing the leaves next. Instead of going straight in and doing the stems on this bottom area, I'm going to do the leaves next so that I know which leaves are crossing over which stems. And the same way, you just do your little scratchy, angly. I need better descriptive words for what it is I'm doing here. So as you do that, it'll make it a lot easier to figure out who's crossing what. And you can kind of accommodate for that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish outlining these and maybe get another bee or two added. I'm going to probably float some bees across my page. So I finished doing my outlines. Still might come in, throw a little of my grass in there. My kids' scratchy type grass. And just outline it. And not even well. So a little something like that. Okay, y'all, how cute are we already? This is pretty cute. I'm ready to throw in another bee, and I think I'm going to have him hover over the flowers the same way that I did on this side. I do wish there was a way to do the same bee in a different, making face towards the right so that there could be a variety, but it's still cute no matter what. He's a pretty cute bee. I could have hand doodled a bee. However, I cannot be the only one that has been suckered in by some of the Dollar Tree stamp stickers and cute things. So now I've got my little bee there. You can do some really fun things with the bees, like, let's do something fun. I'm ready to have some fun with it now. Now we did all the work, now we can get playful. So I'm going to get a little playful here. I might pop a bee up here near my dates. Let's do that. Let's just see how that goes. And in order to give those some time to dry, I'll spend my time doing a little something else. I'm just going to add some little flying lines, I guess. I don't know what you'd call these. These little, the little dashes that you see behind flying bugs. And I'm going to work them in and out of my dates. So I'll get a little closer so you can see. So I'm going to swoop it in and around my dates. I might even try to do a loop-de-loop here. And I will bring them across my center. Let's see if I can get them matched up pretty decent. So this little guy is going to look like he flew all the way across the page. You could even maybe, I would have to probably pencil it first, but make one of its little loop-de-loops a heart shape. That'd be really cute, especially if you had a special day going somewhere during this week. You could loop-de-loop a little heart around a date, and that would be awful adorable. Just to throw some ideas out there. So I don't think I don't have any special dates on this week for this particular week. If I had done this for a different week in April, I could have done it around maybe my sister's birthday or something, but I got nothing special going on. Unless you count laundry as special, those kind of things. Isn't that cute? Can we see that? That's just a fun thing. I don't very often decorate too much up near my numbers. I'm not sure why. Partially because I do like being able to see them pretty clearly at a glance, but sometimes it's fun to just do something a little different and quirky. So now that little bee's got a trail all across. There's been enough time to play. I can come in now with this bee, and I'm going to throw just a really light yellow down. And I should be able to do at least these two bees. This other guy, I might be able to. The ink may have had time. I'll know pretty soon. Let's find out. Yeah, I think it's had enough time. So I just gave them the lightest yellow, which I'm using this super, super pale yellow that I've got going on there. And let's see, here is a, what do I got? Here's some, just some kind of slightly darker yellow. Like I said, normally you don't have to have that many colors. You can layer them on and get the next shade darker. The only problem with that, in a yellow this light, it would take so many layers to finally get that one to darken up because it is a super pale yellow. So at the bottom of this bee, along his belly, I'm just coming straight across with a line. Maybe you can see that. It makes him look a little rounder. That little bit of color or shadow gives him a little, makes him a little rounder, a little plumpier. Now, you could always color in your wings with something like a light blue or a light gray. I'm not sure I'm going to do a full color in, but I might take that light blue that I used on my flowers and just go along right near his body. And I still need to fix these two bees. So just right along his body, close to where those wings touch the body, I just put a hint of blue. And I'm going to come in and fix the wings on this. Like I said, I knew my stamp somehow had a production issue, which was fine because their production issue to me worked out in my favor. I might come in with my little Uniball Signo that I love so much. And throw a little white line across his back. You could even throw a little highlight here on his body. So I do that for all of those. Maybe a little highlight there. I said I wasn't going to do much to alter the bee, but I cannot help myself. I want to put the little flecks that come off of their legs. I don't know what that's called. It almost looks like little feelers on their legs sometimes. So I think I might do that. I was looking for a really thin pen, like a 005. Something like this, maybe this really small. But I'm going to try it with my ballpoint just to see if it's possible. Let's find out. So my bees believe in no shave April, apparently, because they're going to have hairy legs. I'll get a little closer. All I'm doing is just a really light flick down, a really short one, down on their little legs. So mine have little hairy legs. You don't have to do this. I'm just doing it because why not? I think I'm in a stage now where I am ready to start adding some other things. So one thing I think I want to try is, this is probably going to scare everybody if you're not somebody that can draw straight lines, because in all honesty, I'm not either. But I'm going to do kind of a wonky gingham, and I'm going to try to freehand it without using my ruler, just because I don't think it turns out too bad, even if you're a little crooked. So I think, what day will I pick it on? I think I'm going to pick Saturday here. So I'm going to try my best to keep my spaces fairly even-ish. I think this one is pretty forgiving because it's this light yellow. But I do like adding some kind of background colors to my squares sometimes. And I did the horizontals. Now I'm going to do the verticals. And you can always do this same thing with your ruler. I just wanted to show that you don't have to be perfect on everything to still be able to enjoy the result. So as you can see, it's a little wonky, but it's still a cute background. Now might be a fun time to come in with maybe one of these word stamps. So I'm going to peel this one off here and grab one of my blocks. This one also might have some issues. I only tested it once, and that it could have been me. I could not have put pressure on it correctly, but we're going to find out. This is why I always have inky fingers and keep leaving fingerprints on everything. I'm going to go ahead and load this thing up. Drag it across there a little bit. Tap it in. Usually a lot of stampers will tell you to do it the opposite way, but since this one doesn't have a removable lid, normally when I play with ink, trying to get a stamp loaded, if you have an ink pad that's just able to take the pad off, sometimes it's easier to lay your stamp down and tap down on it, but since this one has a lid, that makes it a little hard for me. So I'm going to keep trying to get it covered because I did not do a good job the first time I tested it out. And part of it could be the ink pad. Since I told you, I don't know that they even make these ink pads anymore. That should tell you just how old this thing is. Okay, I think I got it covered pretty good. Oh, wait, no, I don't think I did. I just looked at it again. I could use a little more ink on it. All right, maybe we're good, maybe we're good. I think what I'm going to try to do to get it straight is see that lettering and that lettering. I think that's what I'm going to try to line it up with. So I might want to throw my ruler up here somewhere. And kind of eyeballing where the middle is. And I'm going to try to put like a little thin line that I can line this up with. Just so I don't go completely cattywampus, but even if I did, I don't think it'd be a problem. I don't usually use a lot of word stamps on mine, but I'm going to just because it's in this set. And let's go for it. I'm going to try to get it in alignment with that little line. And I did a terrible job. Look at that. That's okay though. I'm going to give that time to dry and I will just come in with a pen and try to fill in. Do as I say, not as I do. I did warn that I knew I'd had problems with this one the first time I used it, but I still say that could very well be a user error. Now I can go in and start adding some things that I know I need. I'm going to put in my weather. I'm going to put in my meal plan. I'm going to start making my little spots for checklist. I did realize, normally I just draw these in, but going through some of my old scrapbook supplies and stuff, I realized I had a stamp like this that I could very well throw in here and use for my checklist. But while I was stamping, I could do that. But I tend to not do that. I just draw them in where I need them. It's faster to me. It's easier to me. I am going to add some more background looking things. I like pattern. I like a lot of pattern. So I'm just bringing in this little dot stencil. And you could do this by hand. This one just makes it faster. And I'm going to throw all my dots in and try to stay within my little square here. You can still write all over these, especially if you've got something big you want to put in, or you got a quote you want to stick down or something like that. This makes a nice little backdrop for that. Or if you've got spots that you need a filler in, if you're not having a busy week, this is a good way to fill in with a little pattern. So I threw in a little polka dots. Now, I have a weird thing that I do when I fill in my polka dots. I don't necessarily try to, since I know that I may not always stay within the circles, I almost intentionally go like sidestep out of that circle when I go to fill in, almost like an overprint or an off print. If you've ever seen those in a newspaper or a magazine, I tend to do that intentionally because I know that I won't get all of them perfect anyway, so I make all of them imperfect. And you'll see what I mean. So I'm offset just a bit. I don't know why I do it like this. I just do. If you can get it all in the circle perfectly, you are way more awesome than I can be. I was never one to color in the lines super great anyway. So if you can see, I am offset just a hair on all of these. There's a little closer look at what I mean about being offset on them. The great thing about doing these in this really pale yellow is that the pale yellow makes for a really easy background. I might, just for myself, come in here. I knew to stop my lines somewhere over here towards the weekend originally because I knew I was going to put some drawings there. So I might even come back now and add back where I can, because it looks like I might not be able to get my hydration area that I typically put in on the weekend, which is fine because a lot of times I skip marking it on the weekends. But I will be able to get my meal plan part in, it looks like. So I went ahead and finished that line out. I am going to scratch this off. If you notice, going over all the inks and stuff, I've gotten a little bit of ink on my tip. I'm just going to scratch it until I wear it all off. Ta-da. That's a pretty easy fix. So let's go in and get this one in. Now, for my squares and stuff, this is a good point that if you're a sticker user and you have a lot of square stickers or the boxes and the checklist and things like that, you could go ahead and start adding them. But I do mine manually, or I just kind of draw them in manually. So I use a stencil, but you could do it with a ruler. I just happen to have stencils that are... this is for home planning, but the bed squares and rectangles on here all fit really well inside of my my grids, and this is the big, so this is the like 8.5 by 11 size. Look what I did, guys. Look, I just got fingerprints everywhere. Can you see them? I always leave a signature somewhere that way. I think my ink over here is still wet. I think I touched it. So I'm trying to think of where I need squares this week. See, the fun thing about this one, the king size one, you can turn it either direction. So you can get a shorter, wider square, or you can get a taller, longer square. I'm going to go with the short and stubby one, or the short and stubby direction. And I think I'm going to try to randomly in the middle of my page add a bee over here where my little fingerprints are. I might just go ahead and put me a little bee down and see if that helps cover my fingerprints. See, that's why I say I make mistakes and I don't erase them or I don't cut them out, so that if you make similar mistakes, you can get an idea of how to work around those mistakes. I'm sure I could just write over that at some point. But it gives me an excuse to add another little friendly bee here. So I'm going to try to do that. There we go. I've got a little friendly bee. It covered that fingerprint up just fine. And since I have him there, I'm going to come back in and I'll do a little square around him. And I'm just going to start just a hair away from his body. Now it all looks intentional. So I left a little gap and just outlined around him. Pretty cute. I think that works. It was a nice save. I can come in, if I want to dress this square up a little bit, I might come in with whatever color that I am, whatever color theme that I'm working with, and line up across the top of it where it almost makes it look like a label. So I do that quite often. I could do it. You know what? I'm not going to do it around the bee. I'm going to leave that one just like it is, actually. One of the things that I do tend to do under my squares is take some kind of gray. Of course, this is my favorite. And you could do two sides of this. You could shadow wherever you want to. I'm just going to do a drop shadow. So right about here, I'm coming over and just a little bit of a gap away from that corner. And I'm going to start my shadow, and then I'm going to stop it just before I hit the other corner. And it is very subtle, but it definitely makes your squares pop off your page a little better. And it's just really, it's a really fast way to do that. So I'm going to continue to fill in here, and then I'm going to pop back in with you guys and let you see kind of what my final results are. I'm going to add some things that I know I need to go ahead and add for this page and get an idea of where else I might need my squares and my fillers. I'm going to go try to clean the ink off my hands so I don't make this any worse. But I'll be right back with you. Real quick, I want to talk about my weather tracking because I do get asked a lot if that is a stamp or a stencil or whatever. The circles, sometimes I'll take the time. For the sun, I'll take the time and just use trace around some kind of little circle here. Other times I just freehand it, but everything is freehanded. No, they're not all identical, and you're about to see that. So I know I've been questioned. They've got stamps and stickers and stencils for these things, but that takes probably more time than I really want to do. So when it comes to things like this is a cloudy day. None of my clouds are going to be the same. I try to keep them close to the same size, but I know they're not going to be the same. For my sun, I do it old school little kid way. I get a circle, and then I just kind of keep the idea of a clock and do my little sun rays. And guys, I have made a hot mess. This ink does not want to dry. So I don't know if you see that. I'm going to try to find a way to, literally, I re-stamped it with my hand. I'm going to try to find a way to fix that. I'm not sure how yet, but on my clouds and my sun, to make this super simple, on cloudy days that are supposed to be cloudy, but they're not rainy cloudy, I just take some kind of light blue highlighter and just outline the bottom of my clouds, just to give the idea of blue. On cloudy days where it's cloudy and overcast and ugly, I'll do the very same thing, but instead of blue, I use gray. And I have been asked if I put this in before or after the weather occurs. So the whole point of this for me is I don't like getting out on yucky days. If I can avoid it, if I can reschedule something while I'm looking at my calendar for maybe the next day that has better weather, I absolutely will do that. So these are all forecasted from my weather app. Are they subject to change? absolutely all forecasts are, but it at least gives me some kind of general idea, something close where I kind of at least know. Some will come in and make my little suns yellow. If I'm feeling real extra sometimes, I might use 2 different yellows. So I might make my sun a little darker under the bottom, swoop under there and add a little bit of darker yellow. Same on this one. And if I don't quit touching this thing, I think I'm going to have to like let this sit to the side if I don't want to keep smearing that ink. It is having the darndest time. I don't know if you guys can see all that print there. Maybe if I shadow my bee a little bit here, that'll hide some of it. I might shadow my little bit of bee here. You could do this to all your bees. Give them just a little bit of shadowing around them. So I'm going to step aside, finish this, try to come up with a method to solve this. I will tell you this, and sometimes it helps, sometimes it works a little bit, and that's with any ink that you're playing with. Just a regular old pink eraser can sometimes at least lighten those inks. And you can see right there, a lot of that just came up just for me doing this. This is just a kids pack, like the back to school kids pack. Dollar Tree has some gum erasers that I really love, but for this right here, just my plain old pink eraser helps a lot. So that's just a little tip. If it's not bad, you can usually at least lighten it up some. And a lot of times what I will do, you can see what a difference that made. It lightened it up quite a bit. And I will come in with this Dollar Tree Crafter Square. It says it's a metallic marker. It's really not metallic. It doesn't have much of a metallic sheen. But it is very faint. It is a very faint ink. So I might come in on those last little spots and just swipe over it. And once it dries, it kind of blends into this HP paper really, really well. So that's just a little trick, just a little cover-up trick. You can see that made a whole lot of difference on the mess that I made there. So anywhere you might have a smudge or you might have something like that going on. I love this pen and or this marker, and I kind of throw it out there all the time that it does say metallic. It's really not. Now the rest of them in this line, the other colors, the pink, the blue, the green, the silver, they all do have like a shimmery sheen to them. But this one works really well for something like that. So there's a little tidbit on a mistake fix. I think that helped quite a bit. And it's really not all that noticeable in person as well. And once I start writing on that, it's really not going to be noticeable. It's the other reason why I like using this to help, because it is really easy to write over as far as, I don't know, whiteout definitely leaves a texture to me. And this doesn't, so it's not very thick. You're not having to have the bumpiness underneath it. Obviously, I have some more personal things to add and my weekly stuff left to add, but this is where I'm at so far. This is pretty much the basics of any of the artwork or things like that that I might do to decorate for this particular spread. I did manage to solve some of the fingerprint problems, and I think it looks fine now. You can't even tell unless I was to really point it out to somebody. I doubt anybody would even notice that I had that problem. But I hope you had fun hanging out with me and doing this one. I love these cute little bees. I thought they were precious. I had fun playing with the stamp, even though I made a big mess out of it, and then adding a little bit of my own spin to some of the stamp work. But that's it. That's all I've got. I hope you had fun. I can't wait to share the next one with you guys. I have some really fun stencil ideas for May. using some Dollar Tree stencils. So I look forward to doing that with y'all. Bye, y'all.